Hey folks, I am in Upper Shirley for today's video. This quite small area actually has a fairly big story to it, because in this area there was once a brewery, some very large houses and a windmill. The windmill is still here, as is one of the houses. Without further ado, let's explore Upper Shirley. This area was highlighted as a Croydon local area of special character in 2013 as part of a review, mainly because of its architectural significance. Some properties here dated back to the 18th century, and we'll cover all of that a little bit later. But I'm going to start here, not far from the Sandrock. Whilst we currently have a rather large mast there today, opposite here there used to be a row of small cottages. They were known as Teapot Row, and they existed until 1935 when the road was widened. So I guess it's probably about roughly where the grass verge was. And they say that pretty much every property in this area would serve a tea, because the area all around here, Addington Hills, lots of lovely nature to explore, was very popular for day trippers coming out from town. A site that may be familiar to many, the Sandrock pub, built in 1867. So the sand pits were along the end of this road. This is Sand Pits Road. And there's been some development work here in recent times, but I did some research and it suggests that it might be opening up again. So they put some property on the side here. Let's pop over and have another look. Slightly less age to these properties, I think 1930s. So it's a marvellous building. Classic Victorian architecture. I like the fact that they've done something to be able to keep it with us today. And we'll see another popular watering hole a little bit further down. But yeah, so that's the Sandrock, 1867. I read that in the Victorian times, when it was popular here with day trippers, that it often got a bit rowdy here. And they had their Sunday licence suspended for a period. This fairly modern development is Farrer's Place, and it's on the corner of Oaks Road that leads through to Coombe Road. And it's his name because there used to be on this corner a large elaborate fountain, originally built in 1879 and unveiled in 1880 to honour the retirement of local Reverend Farrer. Now, following his death 10 years later, it was rededicated in his memory, and it was converted into a drinking fountain when mains water was brought to Shirley. Now, the water fountain was removed in the 1960s, which is quite strange because when it was dedicated, there was reference to it being there to provide water for the people of Shirley forever. Well, forever until building development came along. So this was the site of Reverend Farrer's fountain, hence Farrer's Place, just along the road. We're approaching the area that is specifically dedicated under this heritage review. So number 132 opposite marks the start of the area, and behind 118 on the left there is an old forge and some mews properties that covers 120 to 126. From here at number 127, these are early 19th century properties, and behind the first one here there was a well in the garden on the map. I don't know if it still exists. And over here is where there was once Shirley Brewery. It was actually called the Sun Brewery, operated for about 40 years, ultimately occupying quite a large plot. The original brewery setup was literally a firkin of ale being taken on a pony and cart for local deliveries. But it grew, founded in 1840 by Thomas Maynard, and the business was sold in 1870. Now in 1892, the final owner, Nathaniel Page, closed the brewery and joined forces with Frederick Overton of the Royal Oak Brewery in Surrey Street, Croydon. Page and Overton's premises behind Surrey Street was named Shirley Brewery in reference to the premises that once stood here. Now, John Merton was one of the owners of the brewery, and he lived at Hillside. That's no longer here, demolished in the 1930s and replaced by Shirley Place, which you've got on the left-hand side. And formerly known as Fern Cottages, number 110 and 112 directly ahead of me are listed. They were listed in 1983, and the listing shows that they're a pair of two-storied stuccoed late 18th century houses, each of two sash windows with recessed blank panels above the first story ones. Modern door hoods At north angle, remains of stucco coining suggest that these houses are all that remain of the longer terrace. So you can see the coining just on the edge of the houses there, and they're suggesting that there was a longer terrace going all the way perhaps to where 114 is at the end, those two being built slightly more recently. So I think, looking at map analysis, the brewery stood from where we got the kind of post and the end of the wall along to where Shirley Place is today, and then went back quite a considerable way. Here we've got another one of the notable pubs, the Surprise. This was built in 1868, 1 year after the Sandrock. And I will call out that I got some very good information and some great photos from a book called Shirley and Addington by Ray Wheeler. I'll put the ISBN number for the book in the description below. We get another view of the Surprise here. Originally 2 cottages. The name commemorates the rare sighting of the Camberwell beauty butterfly. In 1867 it appeared in such large numbers it was called the Great Surprise. And on the land next to the Surprise was a very large property called the Ferns. That was built in 1861 for Frederick Lloyd, a parasol maker. In 1876 Louis Lamott occupied it and named it Heath Courts, and when later owned by David Bernhard it was named Windmill House. Now I sometimes get a bee in my bonnet or a theory in my head, and this post is one of them, because I don't know if it's just part of the pub structure, or I don't know if it's a remaining part of the Ferns property. It's crumbling a bit at the top, very substantial, and I would suggest the wall here probably has some reasonable age to it. Now I've seen an old photo in the book that I mentioned earlier from Ray Wheeler where there were 2 of those posts, but they appeared further down. But of course that could have been another part of the boundary to the property. So it would be great if someone knows for sure whether the post that is next to the Surprise is actually a remnant from the huge Ferns property that used to exist on the land behind here. And again, maps, and if you have the book, have a reference to the book. It was a huge property with lovely ornate gardens, and in those gardens was the windmill, which we're going to come to very shortly. The Ferns house actually stood until 1951, when it was demolished as part of a compulsory purchase of the land for the John Ruskin School. That was built here, retained the windmill, which we'll see shortly, and that was demolished in 1991 for the housing development that's behind me today. I believe the brick pattern here is English bond that was typically used for walls, and this wall has actually carried all the way along here. And we've seen in places like Park Hill in South Croydon where the development has been undertaken, and you have to question, if these walls were so well built originally, why would you destroy them? Maybe it needs some making good. There's even an old railing up there, but again, I don't know how old it is. The romantic in me wants to suggest it's original, but we may never know, unless you know, in which case, please dive into the comments. So this is Post Mill Close, and originally the mill was a post mill, first built by William Alwyn in 1808, destroyed by fire in 1854, replaced by this tower mill that we see today, built by his grandson Richard Alwyn. And just up on Oaks Road there's Alwyn cottages. The Alwyns actually manage land all around here, including areas such as Chelsham, so very much part of the community, so to speak. So this is a listed building. They hold open days. It's managed by the Friends of Shirley Windmill. I'll put the link in the description below. But it's a marvellous example. Stands out nicely against this beautiful sky we have today. And despite all that's gone on around it, from this being a functioning windmill to being enclosed by houses and schools, and now more houses, it's still here today. And the mill went out of action in the 1890s. It was no longer profitable. And it is a fine example. It's well known throughout the area, and no doubt by specialist groups. Just go in on the poster that we got here. Just noticed this, a millstone just outside the door. And then we've got Post Mill Close leading down to the main Upper Shirley Road there. But very much one of the sights on the Croydon landscape. Shirley Windmill. Opposite here on Upper Shirley Road is Coloma Convent Girls' School. In there in 1878 there was a house built called Shirley Hurst originally, and that name changed a bit later to Shirley Court. Now the building is still there, but it's owned as part of the school, so I can't get up to it, can't investigate it if you like, but at least it's retained. And I did some digging into what I might be able to find out about Shirley Court, and the British Newspaper Archive came up trumps. The first story is from the Mitcham Advertiser on the 13th of September 1912, where it mentions that the Mayor and Mayoress of Deptford returned home to Shirley Court after a holiday in Broadstairs. In the Croydon Times on Wednesday the 6th of June 1934, it mentions that Mrs George Given opened her gardens to the public to raise funds for the Croydon General Hospital. The admittance price was 1 shilling. In the Croydon Times on the 20th of June 1953, there was an all-star garden party held to raise funds for the Church of England Children's Society. Invitees to this included Margaret Lockwood, Stanley Holloway, Dulcie Gray and many more. On the 4th of June 1954, also in the Croydon Times, same event held. This time the guests include Kenneth Moore, Petula Clark, Thora Hurd and Bill Owen. One of my contacts in the local history world remembers as a child going up to such an event with their autograph book to meet the stars of the day. So that's a nice little corroborative reference to this newspaper story. Mrs Given was looking to sell the property in the 1950s. She was looking to put it up for development, and there were quite a few challenges. And sadly she died in 1960, and the property was ultimately compulsorily purchased. And then Coloma Convent moved here from their original premises in Tavistock Road in Croydon. I also looked up to see if I could find out more about the Givan family. And it turns out that they ran an Irish linen store that was sold after her death to Samuel Lamont and Sons. But Given's Irish Linens still exist today, effectively, as a business. They're just online now, but they used to have premises in New Bond Street and other parts of London. And they were a huge business, hugely successful business. I should mention that if you travel here, Shirley Windmill has its own bus stop on the 130 and 466 route. Another option would be to get the tram to Coombe Lane, walk across Addington Hills at the top. You could actually have a nice country walk and come out nearby to visit the windmill. So all of this is fairly recent developments that would have taken place after John Ruskin's school moved away. The name carried on to a school in Selsdon Park Road now. But quite a bit of land, because the windmill's kind of a little bit further over in that direction. And that was just in the grounds of the Ferns originally and then the school. Quite a busy road here. I head down here quite regularly, and certainly every time I go and see my beloved Crystal Palace Football Club play. And a lot of history in quite a small area. I would call out that that's Millview Gardens over there, but I'm not sure what sort of view they have of the mill. So this is today Tanglewood Close, and there used to be a house called Tanglewood here. I couldn't find a map that named it, but I can prove that there was a block that represents a house on a parcel of land in this area, and these look like 70s style builds that are now Tanglewood Close. Many properties as opposed to Tanglewood or Tanglewood House, one property. Just to briefly call out Oaks Lane, so there's a cut through here that goes through the Shirley Park golf course and comes out eventually at Coombe Lane, so it kind of runs parallel with Oaks Road where we started. It is an official footpath, so you can go along there, and I might do a country walk one day where I start here and kind of make my way over towards South Croydon. So that's in my thinking at the moment. There is a story to how we've got Oaks Lane and Oaks Road that I know about, but I'll share when I come to do the walk here. So stay tuned for that one in the future, probably the summer. You see, they've been adapting these pillar boxes now. So there's like a solar panel on the top that gives charge so that you can scan a device and open the thing, open the hatch and post your parcel. Haven't used it yet, or haven't used one like it yet. I get a bit more confidence by actually handing my parcel to someone in the post office, or the adapted business that includes a post office counter, because that's the way we tend to do these things nowadays. Shirley Church Road, just another reference-ish to my videos. If you go all the way along there, you get to the site of Swiss Lodge, now sadly demolished, boo. And then after that, I've got Addington heritage areas and various other things in the Addington part of the Croydon borough. So let's carry on up here. Right, I'm in the entrance to Millview Gardens. I see nothing, but I have got a theory, and I'm just going to wander briefly down here and then look back, see if it offers anything else. But I have definitely got a theory here. Okay, my theory. Houses here built while there was just the school opposite, John Ruskin. John Ruskin closed, housing development came in, house buildings that front the road are higher, and therefore that took out the view of the mill from Millview Gardens. Does that sound about right? Let me know what you think, or if you know for sure. But I couldn't see a view of a mill from Millview Gardens. I'm going to stop going on about this now. Done it too much already. Okay, one last quick update. I'm just by the bus stop, as if you're heading towards Addington, and through the trees, through the gaps of two roofs, I see the top of the windmill. But I'm not in Millview Gardens. I'm on Upper Shirley Road. That's it now. Definitely no more. It will not be mentioned. Main entrance there to Coloma. And yeah, the view here many moons ago in this direction would have been of the grand mansion called the Ferns, eventually renamed Windmill House. So much went on in this area. So we've got a sort of lovely lodge house there and another entrance, and Shirley Court is in there somewhere. I'm not going to go poking the camera around, but we have the most beautiful wall here. I'm a huge fan and respector of brickwork and the skill that goes with it, because this would have stood a lot of time and a lot of weather and all sorts of traffic fumes, which hopefully are being controlled a bit more nowadays. And it all goes into that mix to try and retain what we have. We've got the cottages there, similar in style, and the cupola on the top, or cupola, I'm not sure what you say. Here we go, look, Shirley Court Cottages. It's the entrance. And the end one, the end cottage there is where there's a well in the garden, or there was. They may well know that there is. Shirley Place, similar wall setup, although looks new and in keeping with the wall further down. And then we've got the listed properties here. And then slightly later here, there's been some newer brickwork there. Hard to always get the exact dates, times, timeline. And then we've got the old forge just down there. And all those houses have a lot of age. They're all part of the record, the entry in the heritage listing. And these two are also fairly old properties. So we've got Badger's Hole and the Alwan cottages just up here behind me. So the Alwan family built the original post mill and the later tower mill, farmed the land, and the cottages here do have some age to them, but it's private property. I'm not going to go wandering all over there. There was also a Badger's Inn up there at some stage. I'm not sure how formal or temporary or whatever it might have been as a watering hole, but that meant your Badger's Inn, Sandrock and the Surprise. So if you're in Victorian times where it was popular to get out of the smoky, smelly city and get some cleaner air of the Addington countryside, you could have your teas in Teapot Row, or you could have something a bit stronger, and you'd have a choice. But obviously some people did misbehave when they were at the Sandrock. Anyway, thank you for accompanying me on this highlighting of a pretty small area, but as I mentioned at the intro, a lot happened here. Huge brewery, big mansion properties, a property that exists from Victorian times but we can't quite get to, and importantly a windmill that's still there today, standing proud. If you like the video, please hit like. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please hit subscribe. Look after yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.